Do you know what all of this has in common? These are all Apple products. Apple was founded in 1976. And today we're going to be talking about the co-founder of Apple, Steve Jobs. Today, we're talking about one of my favorite people, Steve Jobs. He is an iconic figure in the technology space. Although dyslexia isn't solely responsible for his innovation, it is definitely a factor and enhanced some of his abilities to be able to come up with the technology that he helped co-create with Apple. Steve Jobs did not start with any inherent advantages. He was adopted by two parents who did not even go to college. He worked hard, he went to college, ended up dropping out of college, honestly, because he just didn't enjoy it and didn't see the value. He ended up sitting in some classes that he enjoyed. He's known for sitting in some classes about fonts and different things like that, which he did carry over into Apple. But he did not let the trials and the so-called disadvantages that he had prevent him from being successful in pursuing the things that he thought were important. His dyslexia helped him think differently. It enabled him to think outside the box, which helped him pioneer products like the iPhone and the iPad. He wasn't necessarily the first person to think of the iPad or the idea of having a tablet, but he was the first person to be able to bring it to life. It's important to understand that someone like Steve Jobs had multi-layers of insight that led to his success. Although his attention to detail, along with just other personal traits that he carried, helped him develop the products in the company that he had. But overlapping that and laying that over the insights that he had through dyslexia just made him a force to be reckoned with. His ability to really be able to see a product and be able to cast a vision, not just to his team, but to us, the users. He knew what we wanted more than what we did, in the sense that Henry Ford even talked about, if I would have asked someone what they wanted, they would have said faster carriages. Instead, he came out with the car. So Steve was able to really control the experience, and he's known for that. He's known for kind of keeping the iPhone in a closed loop. So from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, when you're using his devices or Apple's devices, he's really controlling the experience, which if you take dyslexia and some of the traits that come along with dyslexia and lay that over the personality of someone like him, who's kind of rough around the edges, maybe even aggressive. He's criticized for different ways that he handled things with his personality, but it really enhanced some of the features that he had and made the iconic company that we know today. As I mentioned earlier, Steve Jobs' Apple was not the first person or the first company to come up with the idea of a tablet. There were other companies that came out with ideas and products. They just weren't successful. Again, Jobs' ability to control the experience from the beginning to the end really gave him the advantage, because he had such care for the details, even the font used, in how the phone felt in your hand and the edges of the phone. There was so much detail put into it. Honestly, I think it's just his personal insights and skills that he had, but the dyslexia side of it, he was able to just see things a little differently. He was able to take different things, kind of connect the dots and create something new and fresh that society just hadn't seen or experienced before. And it's obviously been incredible to see. Steve Jobs is just an iconic figure. I remember the first time I purchased an iPad. It enabled me to read the first book I ever read. We've talked in the past about the story about me meeting with a friend, him telling me about it. And it was very impactful, the things that Apple has done. Also, I just really appreciate interesting people. Steve Jobs is by far one of the more interesting peoples that have lived in our generation. You read some of his documentaries and just hear the journey that he went through to get to where he was. Unfortunately, he died way too young. He totally changed the industry around the phones. He totally changed the industry around computers. He totally changed the industry around movie making with Toy Story and Pixar. Even reading his personal biography and hearing some of the struggles and things that he went through, I do think it's interesting to see how they interact personally. There's stories about him and his daughter who he didn't even acknowledge for most of his life. Also hearing about things that he did to, just piss off the local municipality when he was trying to renovate his house. There's all kinds of things that you can look at and extrapolate good information from and just help you understand how people function. Sometimes we look at these iconic figures and we kind of hold them on a pedestal because they are really rich or just impactful, but it's interesting to kind of see, to see how they worked inside their life with their families and their dynamics, to understand that they're not really that different than me and you. And we have the ability to make an impact. And we may not be able to build an iconic brand like Apple, but we can make an impact where we have influence. So I encourage you to take the skills that you have and the gifts that you have, and if you're dyslexic or have some other type of learning disability, then figure out what some of the strengths are and how you can leverage that to better impact your life and the people around you. Steve Jobs, I'm incredibly thankful for who he was and that he did really hard things and he sacrificed a lot. Now today, people like myself, I'm able to do a lot of things with my family that I wouldn't have been able to do without his sacrifice and hard work. So Steve Jobs, thank you.